This is a dry box I constructed to keep my PLA filament dry. You could also use it for other things like metal tools to keep them from rusting. Key item you need is a gasket lid or a case like this so that there's no airflow in and out. Then you just need some silica crystals or silica beads. It's a desiccant, it basically draws moisture out of the air, and a place to expose them to the air inside. So I took this little guy here, I got it at a supermarket, it came with some cold cuts inside. I ate the meat, I used a hot glue gun to poke a whole bunch of holes in the top, and this is just to hold these crystals so they don't get everywhere. You could also purchase various packs of desiccant like these that have beads inside of things like this, but I just found the bulk crystals were the cheapest way to go. Optionally, you can put a humidity gauge inside. I 3D printed a bracket to hold it at a nice angle so I can read it from the outside. You could just tape one to the outside here or just kind of set it inside and read it through the container. So this setup with these crystals and those guys over there basically keeps the interior of this tub below 20% relative humidity. I don't know how far below because this guy just hits low when it hits below 20%, but it definitely keeps it below 20% relative humidity, so my PLA is ready to use whenever I need it. So I store my PLA filament in the garage, which is very humid, and I've been using these eSun vacuum bags along with the Innova Precision handheld vacuum sealer to make it easy to seal them. And so that will vacuum package them. I put a little desiccant packet inside, and that keeps them in pretty good condition. The only downside is that anytime I want to use one of these, I have to break the vacuum to get it out. And so, I have to pop this thing open and then take it out and print with it. And then when I'm done with it, I have to put it back in and seal it back up. So I want to replace this system. Also, some of these bags have holes in them because I have a piece of filament that poked them, and so they don't maintain a vacuum for very long. So then it's basically just a plastic bag with a desiccant packet, which is all right, but the vacuum's a little better. So I want to replace this system with a hard-sided dry box. So this is specifically the Sterilite gasket box, 54 quart, 51 liters. But you can search, just gasket box, and it doesn't have to be Sterilite, just any plastic box with a gasket. You could go out and buy a brand new Sterilite container. The key thing here is you want to make sure that it has a seal. And so this one here has this nice foam seal around. So, it's not 100% airtight, but it does a very good job of keeping air from moving in and out. I got this at Goodwill for $4.99, so that's how I recommend you buy one if you can luck into finding one like this. Apparently this one used to have Beanie Babies in it. And so the key requirement here is that it has some type of seal around the outside that makes it somewhat airtight. And you could go fancy, you could buy like a Pelican case or something, but you probably don't need to do that. I think it's nice that it's see-through so you can see what's inside of it, and you pick the size for however many filaments you want to store. This is actually a little bigger than I need for my current set of PLA, so I might store some ABS in here. There's no problem with drying out ABS either. And then you need a way to keep it dry. And so you can use like a whole bunch of packs of these desiccant beads. I'm going to be using this stuff here, which is flour drying crystals, because it cost me about $18 for a 3-pound bag. And so that should last a while, even in a larger case like this. Optionally, but recommended, would be a humidity meter. Hydrometer, digital hydrometer, humidity meter. So, my relative humidity here is almost 60. But it's nice to have it just stuck up against the inside here so that from the outside you can see what the relative humidity is. It'll tell you if you need to recharge your desiccant drying packets, make sure it's working, make sure you're not leaking air in or anything like that, and just to know it works. So you can buy any old one, just hot glue it to the inside. I have a specific one here, and I 3D printed a kind of a mounting bracket that mounts it at an angle. And so if I put this in my mounting bracket, I can hot glue the mounting bracket inside, and then it will hold it at a nice 10-degree angle so it's easier to see from outside. So if you look in the description, I'll put a link to the STL file. So if you buy this specific one, you could use a mounting bracket like that. I am personally not putting any ports in this. I have a heated build enclosure, so when I want to use a filament, I pull it out, I put it in the heated build enclosure, I use it, and then I put it back in here when I'm done. So I'm not feeding filament out of this. Now, because I'm using these silica gel crystals, which are much smaller than the beads, I need a container to contain them. And so I'm going to use just this Tupperware I got. I think meat came in it from the supermarket, and I just used it in my dishwasher, so basically it was free. I'm going to fill this only about a ½ inch to an inch or so on the bottom. I'm trying to maximize the surface area in contact with air, and then I'm just going to poke a whole bunch of holes in the top. So if you flip it over accidentally, it's going to get stuff everywhere, so don't flip it over. But I'm just going to leave it in the bottom, and I'm just counting on there being enough airflow in the box just for eventually the water vapor to go in there and get absorbed. Alright, so if you melt a lot of polypropylene by pushing it into your hot glue gun, you'll have to push a lot of hot glue out to get it out of your hot glue gun before you can use the hot glue gun again. So I just printed this bracket. It just holds my meter at a 10-degree angle, so when it's up against the side of the case, it's still kind of tilted up so you can kind of read it. It also leaves the sensor ports open, the battery compartment, the on off buttons and so forth accessible here. Once I hot glue this thing to the case, it's basically stuck in there. Of course, with hot glue you can just rip it off if you need to, but it's nice to be able to change the battery without doing that. Although usually these guys last for a couple of years before you have to change the battery. Now, depending on where you're going to store this, you might want this showing up through the lid, but I'm going to be storing it in such a way that I want it showing through one of these front sides here. So I'm going to put a generous helping around the whole rim here and just stick it in place, trying to get it mostly upright. Alright, so there it is, visible through the Sterilite. You can see here it's winter time for us and I'm inside the house, so this is 63% relative humidity, but out in the garage it gets a lot more humid than that. Now, the particular piece of plastic Tupperware type thing that I found here, it just fits in the corner there. If you're at Goodwill and you've already found one of these, you might look for something that's the right width to kind of fit super nicely in there. But, you know, I figured this will be enough. If not, I'll make a second one and put a second one in. But I think this will be enough, especially combined with the other Desiccant packs that I just have from the rolls already. Now, silica is not something you want in your lungs, so if you're using crystals like this where it can make dust, definitely wear a respirator. Just, you know, this is a fancy, you know, P100 respirator, but an N95 would be plenty fine. And when you pour it, don't like pour it really fast, just pour it slowly so you control the dust. So I was relatively careful pouring these out, and they didn't make a lot of dust, so the respirator might not be necessary, but if you have one, you might as well wear it. You can see here I'm not filling it all the way up, I'm just doing maybe a ½ inch level here, because most of the interaction will be with the surface area here, with the air that's coming in and out through this thing here. Now, this has 10% orange indicators, so when those orange indicators turn green, it means it's about halfway used up. And you can throw it in the oven at 150 centigrade, probably not in the plastic, to dry it back out and recharge it. Or you can throw it out and use more. My estimate here, I probably used 1/3 of a pound out of this 3-pound bag, maybe a ½ pound out of the 3-pound bag. You know, so it's 18 bucks here. So ideally, you can just keep reusing it by heating it up again and again. But it is potentially something you could throw out and then just pour more in. Or you could buy some of those dry bags, or use the Desiccant beads in the nice little packs like this so you don't have to deal with the powdered form. I have these left over for my rolls. I'm just going to throw them in as well. So, you know, the more the merrier as far as Desiccant goes. So this is a 54-quart container. To give you an idea, I have 6 rolls in there, and I have plenty of room. I could probably do another 6 if I packed them nicely. You know, the Desiccant packets and stuff do take some extra room in there as well, but you know, so it really depends on how big of a container versus the number of rolls you have and the number of rolls you might pack in the future. I might just put my ABS in here as well. As I said, you know, there's no danger or problem with drying out the ABS as well. It doesn't need it, but it can be stored in there together. So you can just have all your filament in one box. All right, we're going to seal this guy in. I've seen it's already at 60 as opposed to 63 where we started. We'll give it some hours and we'll see kind of what relative humidity it goes down to. Matter of fact, I'm just going to store my extra bag of desiccant crystals in there, and so if the Ziploc isn't sealed, it doesn't matter because they're doing what they're supposed to do. And heck, I have these vacuum bags and vacuum sealer. I need to store them somewhere, so until I get more rolls of filament, I can store anything I want in there. If I had pieces of metal I was worried about rusting, I could throw some metal in there, but anything in that box should be kept at a low humidity. Alright, this box has been closed up for about 3 hours, and we are down to 38% relative humidity inside. So I have the big container of desiccant crystals there, which is on the opposite side from the meter, which is up here. And you can see it's kind of got stuff all over in there, and we're basically just counting on the natural diffusion of the water vapor throughout this box. So it takes some time, but once you get it down to a low humidity level, it'll stay that way until you open it. Alright, it's been about 20 hours. The box is down to 27% relative humidity, so very slowly the desiccant is pulling the moisture out of the air, and it is going down still. Alright, it's been a couple of days. This guy's down to 22% relative humidity. I think it is getting all of the water out of my PLA filament. Pretty soon we're going to hit the lowest my sensor can read. Below 20% it just does LL. Okay, it's been 27 days since I closed this box. The humidity sensor here just says LL, which means it's lower than 20 relative humidity. In my garage, it's winter time, so it's only about 63% relative humidity in the garage, but it's time for me to open the box because I need some PLA filament out of it. We're going to open it up. That's going to expose everything to the 63% ambient humidity. I'm going to get some PLA out, and I will put a few things in, and then we'll close it back up. So the air inside will get the ambient humidity. So the color indicators are still orange there, and they are still orange in all these guys. So it has absorbed water from the interior, but it hasn't been used up yet. I opened this guy up to talk about it, and it got up to 33% relative humidity. I'm going to time it and see how long it takes to get back down to low. Alright, so 2 hours after I closed it up, this guy is down to 24% relative humidity inside. Now there's no fan or anything, so we're just counting on the natural movement of water vapor within there to get that water vapor to the desiccant packs and the desiccant crystals. Alright, so within a day, this thing gets back down below 20% relative humidity. So it looks like if the PLA filament you put in it is dry, it doesn't take too long, just, 5 or 6 hours to get the air back down to a really low point. When you first put things in, if they're damp, it might take several days to draw all the moisture out of them. Alright, I'm quite happy with this method of storing PLA filament.